bringing Dan Orlovsky from the mothership. You can watch him on NFL Live Monday through Friday at 4 Eastern, sprinkled in on some other shows throughout the week. And Dan, kind enough to join us. Let me start there. Let me start with best free agent running back signing. If I said Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley.
Oh, Saquon Barkley. Dan, I think that when you look at who Saquon has been and relative to the draft slot, you'd say underperformed. But if you compare or look at what he's accomplished, given what's been around him, running back is a little bit similar to quarterback, and we phrase quarterback as being a dependent position. Running back is relatively similar. You can only do so much as a back with a bottom 5 offensive line. And I don't want to misrepresent that Saquon's been unbelievable, but he's had some pretty good moments in a really bad situation. And now he's going into a situation where his life has never been easier. His life as a back in New York was always difficult. It was always more bodies near the line of scrimmage, and there was never, hey, I get the ball, or rarely, I get the ball and I've got space to work and make something happen. He's going to have that in Philadelphia. They're going to spread the field with their talent on the outside, AJ and Devontae and Dallas Goedert, and then they're going to have an offensive line that they weren't dominant like they were 2 years ago, but still a top 5 offensive line. His job is going to be significantly easier. And so I think the addition of him gives that offense that true pick your poison, almost 3-way now. Pass game, Jalen as a ball carrier, and now Saquon.
We were wondering, if you're a Hall of Fame voter, what will be the criteria for a Hall of Fame running back?
I think yards per carry, is relatively significant. Where that falls in your pairs, the comparison. I think the longevity and how long you did it. Yeah, Barry Sanders obviously didn't do it long, but the eyes don't lie, and so. And then yards per game, I think is a factor as well. So it's going to be hard to take. Well, that guy played behind a really bad offensive line. Now, numbers have just become a bigger part of the sports scene, I think, in the last maybe 10 years, as far as like studying them and analyzing them and understanding them. So I think they might become a greater part of the conversation. But I think there's going to be some bare minimum numbers that guys will have to meet.
Is Derrick Henry a Hall of Famer?
Oh, absolutely. Derrick Henry's I don't know what his yards per carry average is in his career, but I'd be surprised if it's not over 4.5. I think Derrick Henry, the most impressive stat, Dan, is he averages over 5 yards per carry in his career after November. So you're talking about a guy that gets better as the season goes on and the more carries he gets. I think he averages like 4.1 in September and October and 5.2 November and after. So I think because and the eye test, right? We've all watched him run. Yeah, I think he's that modern day Earl Campbell type of guy.
Well, I was wondering, and I made the comparison, the analogy to starting pitchers in baseball, where nobody's going 9 innings anymore. You're pitching 5 innings, maybe 6 innings. That you're going to have Max Scherzer, Clayton Kershaw, Justin Verlander, but after that, we're kind of redefining, a Hall of Fame starting pitcher. And I feel like we're doing the same thing with the running back. Now it's about how many catches you're going to have as well. Christian McCaffrey, is he a Hall of Famer?
I can't say he's a Hall of Famer yet. I'd be shocked if he doesn't end up being a Hall of Famer. McCaffrey's played for 7 years now, maybe. So, it's not all that short of what Barry did. But yeah, I think the total yardage, I didn't think about that one. Like your total yardage or your yards from scrimmage will probably be a greater factor. Also because guys didn't do that 15, 20, 25 years ago at that position, 30 years ago. It was turn around and hand them the ball. But yeah, McCaffrey's certainly trending in that space for sure.
We also brought up Julian Edelman, that you want your players in big moments to come up big. And Edelman, of all the receivers who played the game, if you look at what he did in big games, he came up big. Can he be a modern-day Lynn Swann who didn't put up big numbers, but in big games came up big? Or Eli Manning at the quarterbacking position. Eli was not a great quarterback, but he did win 2 big Super Bowls, and he did it against the Patriots.
The reason I'm laughing is so without coming like this is stupid name dropping, but I think the context of the name is interesting. So a couple weeks ago, went on vacation. Miles Teller, the actor,
Yeah.
Maverick, great. So we run into each other. He finds out my wife's from Philadelphia, and immediately he wants to talk Philly sports. And true to his Philly sports roots, he does not like anybody really outside of Philadelphia, athlete-wise. We get into this very same argument. He's a diehard baseball guy, and his baseball arguments were fantastic. And he brings up Eli Manning when it comes to the Hall of Fame, and he argues, and he says, see, the problem with you football guys is you guys weigh postseason more than the regular season. And he was like, is Eli in the Hall of Fame? I said, he's a lock for the Hall of Fame. And he's like, how? His stats in the regular season place him here. I'm like, dude, look what he did in the postseason. And he was adamant that we as a football community, we pay attention to postseason more than the regular season. Because my answer on the Julian Edelman question would be, yeah, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer because of the way he performed in the biggest games. And his argument was so much more baseball centric in that, like, well, if you took the football method, Clayton Kershaw might not get in, but he obviously does when you factor in the regular season. It was like 3 hours, Dan, of arguing about just that topic.
He's Dan Orlovsky of the Mothership, former NFL quarterback. You can see him on NFL Live Monday through Friday at 4 Eastern. All right, let me start with Justin Fields. Justin Fields' next team or next year will be playing for who?
Number 1's the Seattle Seahawks. Number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 3, the Indianapolis Colts. I am surprised that we sit here on Wednesday, March 13th, and it's come to that where we're trying to figure out a spot for him as a backup quarterback and not a minimum competing for a starting job quarterback. I don't necessarily know why, but I do think Seattle losing Drew Lock and Geno with firmly being their starting quarterback. But Mike McDonald doesn't have any allegiance to Geno, and you just never know, and you want enough good players at that position. And I think Justin's proven more than enough to be worthy of, hey, a 6th or 7th round pick and $2.5 million. Indianapolis loses Gardner. Anthony's got a style of play that you just have to be blunt about. And you want to make sure that there's someone there that can help his development while also pushing him. And Philadelphia with Jalen, similar styles potentially of football. And I believe that if you're a legit Super Bowl contender, if you honestly feel that you have a chance to be a playoff and Super Bowl contending team, and you don't have a stone cold backup that you truly believe in that can go win a game or two, that's a failure as an organization.
I was just telling Paulie during the commercial break that I could see Justin Fields playing in Seattle. For what you were saying as well. But it feels like he's going to have to be a backup wherever he goes. Is Russell Wilson, do you think part of the negotiations with Pittsburgh was, I'll come there for $1.2 million, but I'm going to be the starter? Do you think?
No question, Dan. No question. I think that, and also he knows that they can't go get a quarterback in the draft. That was always my reservation when people were saying, well, Atlanta or the Raiders, because both those teams have at least more wiggle room to potentially go up. And the NFL, they'll say one thing and do another thing. And so that's why him getting, the freedom to seek that release or trade or whatever ended up with Denver. I don't remember exactly how it went down. The timing of it mattered. And I think for sure, if Pittsburgh said, hey, you're going to come in, you're going to be the starter, and it's going to be your football team. And I think that it's a no-brainer for them. I think it's a total upgrade. If Russell Wilson, I've said this, if he plays, people are all over the map with how they think he played last year. My point is this: you don't throw for 26 touchdowns in the NFL if you play bad. You don't. Maybe you don't play great, but you don't. And so I think if he plays the same level, he's that alone for them was worth 2 more wins.
I agree. I said the same thing. You're getting 9 wins with Tomlin.
Exactly.
You're guaranteed 9 wins. He's done it every single year. Can Russ give you 2 more in a very, very competitive division? Tell me the downside of the Falcons getting Kirk Cousins.
The downside is that you get good and good in the NFC when it comes to getting to the NFC title game or Super Bowl won't be good enough. You now have a chance to win your division, but do you have a chance if Kirk plays his best football and your team plays their best football and they got to go beat San Francisco and you get their best, can you beat them? No. Can you beat the Rams? No. Can you beat Philadelphia? Probably not. So even, if you get high-end Kirk, who's, top 7, 8, 9 production-wise, it's still not good enough for me to take money and go, yeah, that team's going to the NFC Championship game.
Can you see Jerry Jones letting Dak play this year without having to extend him?
I can. That would be surprising to me. The day after they lost to Green Bay, I said they should blow the whole place up, restart. 3 years in a row, 12 wins, I would have gotten rid of Mike McCarthy. I would have moved on from Dak. Try to get as much value as I could from a good starting quarterback in the NFL. Now they're pigeonholed. You're either going to play handcuffed this season because of the salary that he has, and you're going to have holes that you're not going to be able to fill at some point, or you're going to have to extend him and continue to kick the can down the line when the results, when they've mattered the most, have been underwhelming. And so I could see Jerry Jones saying, well, I've tried it. It hasn't gone the way I've wanted. Maybe we try it this way. I also think this, Dan, and I've said this publicly, I don't think that the Cowboys are truly dead set on winning a Super Bowl. I think they're committed to mediocrity, and I think they're committed to winning. I don't think they're committed to and pushing all their chips in. Los Angeles Rams, less need, put it on the table type of stuff. We're going to win the whole thing. I don't believe that's them.
Mike Florio said the same thing yesterday, that Jerry Jones cares about being relevant, not necessarily about winning or doing everything it takes to win. He wants to be relevant. So sort of echoing the same sentiment.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, the Cowboys are going to be relevant. I've only worked at ESPN for 6 years now, but they've been relevant all my 6 years. So I feel like they're going to be relevant no matter what. I just think, and you can't, I got into this with Stephen A last week. They have a winning culture. They do, they win. It's just that when I look at the other teams, like San Francisco trades for McCaffrey, Philadelphia goes and gets a Saquon Barkley or an A.J. Brown. The Los Angeles Rams make the trade for Matthew Stafford. There's these other teams that we sit there and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to sit there and go, yeah, they're taking their shot right now. And it just never feels that Dallas takes their shot. They make good moves. They just don't take their shot.
Well, maybe Jerry is guilty of being too loyal.
If that's his character flaw, then God bless him, Yeah, I guess he's obviously got a track record of being that. I think you can be very loyal and win, and at the highest level. I don't think that Shawn McVey's an unloyal person or Les Snead's an unloyal person. They've cut me, So I guess you could phrase it in that he's a little bit too nice of a person when it comes to those specific roles.
What's the best way you were cut in the NFL? The nicest way.
Yeah, the nicest way. Surprisingly, Coach Caldwell, who's one of the nicest people to ever come through the NFL, was probably the most cold one. And I don't say that in still bothers me thing, but I was on a golf trip in Atlanta and he called me, and Coach Caldwell and I had some conversations because he was there when my kids were born and my wife going through triplets, and we had shared a lot. He called me one day and it was a 40-second conversation. I was with him for years. And he was like, hey, man, we're going to go in a different direction. And I was like, all right. He's like, all right, well, we'll catch up soon. I was like, dang. The nicest was, my last year, summer of 17, I'm in Philadelphia with my family. Shawn McVey calls me. I'd known Shawn just, hey, what's up? In between games type stuff. And he said, hey, Dan. And I said, what's up? He goes, hey, I got this kid, Jared Goff. I want you to come out. You're going to be the third string quarterback. You're not going to play at all in the preseason. You're not going to get any reps in practice. I just need you to coach this kid. He's talented. He just doesn't know football right now like that. And I said, all right. And I said, Shawn, you're going to keep 3. And he's like, yeah, you're going to be our 3rd quarterback. You're not going to play. You're barely going to get reps. Great. So I go out to LA. I'm there in camp. Then I go, I'm not joking, 18 straight days without taking a rep in practice. I'm just a coach in pads. Just, I'm thinking going into my 13th year, coaching pads, whatever. Then like a day before the last preseason game, he's like, hey, you're going to start and take all the reps in the game. And I'm like, dude, I haven't played football in like a year. And so I don't play good. I don't play like terrible, but I don't play good. And so he calls me in the next day or a couple of days later. I think I'm totally fine. And he calls me in, and for an hour, he goes over like, hey, what do you think's good about the team? What do you think's bad about the team? All that stuff.
Oh, no.
And then at the end, he was like, hey, just we're going to go in a different direction. And we're going to sign a younger player, but continues to ask me all these different questions about the offense and this and that. And it was such a, he didn't sugarcoat it and he didn't try to lie to me. So that's why I was like the nicest.
Wow.
But Shawn was great, man. Like I remember calling my wife and being like, almost like I am now, being like, all right, it's done. Like the journey's over. Shawn just fired me, and it was like the nicest firing in the world. So I'm flying home.
Yeah, because you got fired. You didn't get cut. You were a coach who got fired instead of a player who got cut. Paulie, do you have the box score of Orlovsky when he was with the Rams?
Yeah, of course. Packers won 24-10, August of 2017. Dan was 16 of 30 for 149 and a touchdown.
All right.
And 2 picks.
Oh. One of the picks went off a freaking
We'll take that 1 pick.
One of the picks on a slant to the left went off his hands.
Do you think if you didn't throw any interceptions that you might have kept your job?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Good to talk to you. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
That's Dan Orlovsky. I love the stories. You imagine going in there to get cut? How you cut somebody, fire somebody. Hey, tell me about my team here. Well, give me the pros and the cons. Let me talk to you for an hour. Oh, by the way, we're going in a different direction.